Hello and welcome to another episode of the Health Notebook. Today we have Mrs. Vilet in the studio and we'll be looking at some aspects pertaining to the healthy food plate. Mrs. Vilet, welcome to the studio once again.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, I know today's topic, it deals with something known as the healthy food plate or the food plate. But before we actually go and discuss what is the food plate in terms of the dietitian's perspective, I just wanted to find out from you a little bit more, or just to empower the viewers in terms of giving them information about the basics of how food is made up. So I'm looking at proteins, carbohydrates. If you can just explain what is proteins?
Okay, so proteins, there are two types. You get animal proteins and then you get plant proteins. Your animal proteins would be your legumes like your lentils and your beans, and then your animal proteins is like from chicken, fish, so that would be a source of animal protein.
Okay, and when we look at carbohydrates, can you maybe just inform the viewers of the different types of carbohydrates?
So you get carbohydrates, which we all know, from potatoes to rice to cereals. That forms part of the carbohydrate group. And then you get two types of carbohydrates. You get the refined one and you get the unrefined one. So your refined one would be your white type of starches, such as your normal white rice, your normal white bread, and then your unrefined would be where there's more fiber in. So that would be like your cereals, your dark cereals, and then also your brown breads, your whole wheat breads actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of fats as well, can you just explain to the viewers the different types of fats that there are?
Okay, so you get basically your saturated and your unsaturated fats. Your saturated fats is that comes from your animals, and then your unsaturated fats is that comes from your fish and your nuts and all of the in that groups. Yeah.
Now we're looking at some aspects in terms of malnutrition as well.
Yes.
Can you just define malnutrition and how common is it? Do you get it in adults and children? We'll just break it down so that the viewers can understand.
Okay, so malnutrition is when you're not taking enough foods in, nutritious foods in. Sometimes you're not receiving enough, or you're taking in foods but not getting enough out of the foods, or you're taking in food but not absorbing it. The World Health Organization mentions that about a third of children's deaths is related to malnutrition.
Okay, can you maybe, I know there's a categorization, there were certain illnesses defined or associated with the lack of protein. Has this classification changed, and can you just broadly define that as well?
Yes, we've got two main types, which is your protein energy malnutrition. Okay. That's when the child is deficient in your protein and energy. And then we also get the micronutrient deficient. That's when your child is deficient in micronutrients.
Okay. Can you maybe just give us some signs or symptoms and how that particular child can present when they do have a protein energy malnutrition or when they do have the micronutrient deficiency? Just a few examples.
With the protein energy malnutrition, that's where your child would be wasted. That's your short-term malnutrition, or stunted, that's the long-term one. So with wasted, the child will be thin for weight or age, and with the stunted, the child will be too short for weight or age, or too short for age.
In terms of adults, does malnutrition also occur, or how can malnutrition present in adults?
Yes, it does occur, and it normally presents when patients have certain illnesses like TB or if they're HIV positive. And that's where we normally see the malnutrition.
Just also to inform the viewers, when a person does have an illness as well, having a good meal is very important, because sometimes the food assists with digestion and absorption with that particular medication. So that is just to inform the viewers that food plays not only a critical role in supplying the body with nutrients, but I think in terms of their medical treatment, that it plays a very critical role there.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now, I know we're discussing the food plate today. Can you just tell the viewers what is a food plate?
Okay, so the food plate model is ideally what we should be having for lunch and supper. Okay. There's also a food plate for breakfast, if you want to put in for breakfast as well. So if we divide the plate into 5 quadrants, equal sizes, the one part is protein and one part your carbohydrate, and the other two out of the 5 parts should be vegetables and 1 part fruit.
So you've brought us some samples today. They look very interesting. Can you maybe just explain to the viewers exactly what is meant now by the food plate? Exactly what you tell.
This is the plate, the food plate model,
okay.
And we have 2 vegetables,
okay.
1 carbohydrate, and we have your 1 portion of protein, and then the other part would be your fruit. But you don't have to, you can take this out, and the other part that's not in here is your good source of oil, which would be for preparing, maybe if you can use olive oil or whatever oil, something.
Okay. Okay. Now, where would you use the food plate exactly, firstly? I mean,
well, dietitians normally use it when we explain to patients in consultation. Okay. We also can gather from the patient how much they're eating and what they're eating, because the models are in portion sizes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then another important, I know this is a breakaway from the food pyramid. Now, yeah, I know this is the breakaway from the food pyramid, but why should one use it, which is number 1?
The food plate model is more accurate than the pyramid, because the pyramid overestimates certain foods, food groups, such as your carbohydrates, your starches, where previously it used to be 6 to 11 portions a day. With the food plate model, you'll see that vegetables is more dominant than your grains.
Okay. I know you made references to portions as well. So how important is portions in terms of the food plate?
Okay, portions is very important, because it has been shown that people who don't use portion control take in excess about 30% more food than what they actually require for the day. So
I know you get different types of sizes of food plates, but how would one actually go about measuring exactly or quantifying based on the individual? So is there any type of measurement as well?
The whole measurements that you can use is a cup. So your standard 250 ml cup, not the 300 one. For carbohydrates, you would say, it depends. If it's rice, you'd say if you were using half a cup, that would be about 2 carbs. You can also, if you don't have a scale, you can also use your hand, which is quite easy to use. So if I take my hand, for example, okay, so if you're having protein, you would use the palm of your hand. That would be your protein size if you don't have a plate. This is per meal. With oils or fats, you use 1 segment of your finger. That's 1. For cup size, we use your fist. You just close your fist, and you can actually, if you turn it like this, it's also for vegetables. So this would be your vegetable portion as well. Okay,
so that's just another way of measurement to ensure that you have the correct amount of food makeup, basically. Yes. Okay, now just going back to the food pyramid, I know it was fairly well discussed before and things like that. So how does it differentiate between the food plate and in terms of calories and the nutritional value? Okay,
I did mention that the grains, your starches, is overestimated in the food pyramid, and that's the reason why we have the food plate model now. And also your vegetables were less, so in the food plate your vegetables take dominance. Also your oils. If you look at the food pyramid, right on top there's the very small block would be for oils, and then there's also one for sugar or sweets next to it. With the oils, it just says oils and fat. It doesn't specify for certain oils and certain fats which you'll...
So the food plate is a build-up of the actual food pyramid, basically. It's a modified version taking into consideration the quantification.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so just going back to the food plate as well, I know you've been mentioning the top end and the lower end of the food pyramid. Just explain to the viewers what foods actually go into the different levels of the food pyramid.
So the last level, which is your broadest one of the food pyramid, is your starches, which will be your rice, your potatoes, sweet potatoes. The one after that would be a smaller one, and that's your vegetables.
Okay.
And the one on top of that would be your meats and dairy. And then the last one on top is your fats, oils, and then also in its own block is your sugars as well.
Okay, so that is defined then as the food pyramid. Okay, I see you've brought some additional samples as well. Can you maybe just explain that to me as well?
Okay, so this is your cereal. Okay, your good source of cereal, and this is about a cup of cereal, and this is the bowl as well. So so this would be for breakfast. This is an option for breakfast. Also your egg is also an option if you want to have for breakfast as well. You can have up to 2 eggs if you want to. And then your salad, which would be your lettuce, your cucumber, your tomato, which is free, so you can have that with any meal. And then your fruit, you can have 1 or 2 fruits to complement your food plate.
So what you've mentioned now is, or you've presented these various food plate models. Now, in terms of affordability, how affordable is it, and how can one actually apply this in one's daily lives? I know we have very hurried lives and rushed lives. How do you see this fitting in, and in terms of affordability? Can you just give me 1 or 2 points in terms of that?
Well, affordability, food prices are increasing, but if we make the right choices at the end of the day, it's for our health, and then it will cut the costs of paying for expenses for medical items. It depends on what you do as well. If you cut the costs of all the unnecessary foods, then you could save. You could save
direct the money towards developing a food plate.
Yeah, and then also there's certain things that you can do, such as buying in bulk. If you buy in bulk, then you can also cut the cost, because then you would be buying more and saving. So you need to sort of shop and see where food prices, if there's specials or food prices has gone down, so you can use that as well. Also buying in bulk, there's lots of people who buy bulk and share. So if we were to buy a bag of vegetables and share it and pay half the price, then at least we can get more out of that and pay less. Also things like cooking and freezing is also an option, especially if you're alone, if you're living alone. Cooking, say 1 or 2 nights a week, and freezing your food, and then the food is still fresh, it's still got all the nutrients in, and you can rewarm it and then have it. So that's another option. So you wouldn't be using electricity all the time.
Okay.
And you'll save time as well.
So preparing the food at one occasion, you can actually then save time instead of preparing your food plates on a regular. So you actually need to sit down and work out exactly what you're going to have and how you're going to actually break your food plate down.
It's the ideal, yes. So you could do that. You could cook and then cool the food down, freeze it, and then have it throughout the week. If it's something that you know maybe you're going to have almost every day. Okay.
Now, in terms of cooking and freezing, I know you said that you can actually cook it at one go and then freeze it. in terms of freezing, what's the duration that it might last, which is number one, and how many times are you allowed to preheat? So let's assume you give me, or basically I prepare the food, I freeze it, and now I decide to take it out of the deep freezer and I heat it up. Am I allowed to refreeze it and then use it again, or what's the protocol regarding that? And
the ideal would be to, if you're going to, for example, have one food added to your meal, say 3 times a week, small packets of the one item, and reheat it one at a time. So you're not gonna freeze a whole bag full and then defrost it, cook it, and then refreeze it again.
I think the reason for me asking you that question was just to highlight the portion aspect to the viewers as well. It's just to show them the approach. It shouldn't be in at one go, but it should be then subdivided into smaller pieces or sections. Okay. Now, in terms of children that are breastfeeding, can you maybe just give the viewers 1 or 2 insights in terms of children that are breastfeeding?
So ideally we'd want the mother to breastfeed for the first 6 months and then start complementary feeding.
Okay. And what do you mean by complementary feeding?
To add a food to the breastfeed, so the baby would breastfeed and then would start eating a type of cereal. So
is it basically introduced to new types of food while he's breastfeeding?
It's introduction to a solid, yes.
Okay, and that is normally a phased approach as well. I mean, over a number of months, where you would introduce the child to various different types of solid foods, and you also would monitor them for any allergic reactions and things like that.
Yes, you would also not want to give them any foods that would possibly cause allergic reactions, such as your egg and your wheats. So you would start off with possibly a rice cereal, if it's possible.
So what would come after the rice cereal then?
Would be your vegetables. So you can start with the orange veg, such as your pumpkin and your butternut.
And then gradually go through the entire vegetable range to make the child much more comfortable with that particular type of food. Can you just explain 1 or 2 of the advantages associated with breastfeeding? I know as we've mentioned, we have full-time jobs and things, but there's many advantages. Can you just highlight 1 or 2 associated with child breastfeeding?
With breastfeeding, the advantages, there are a few advantages. One of them being it creates bond between the mother and the child, and also because of the immune system of the child gets protected by the mother's breast milk. Also, the mother doesn't have to prepare anything, so the breast is there if the baby wants to drink. So there's no preparation of cleaning, making sure things are clean and prepped. Also, with the breast milk, as an advantage is that you don't have to pay for it. So it's available, it's there. It's not inexpensive. It's very expensive actually. So the ideal would be for the mother to breastfeed. For up to 2 years, she can breastfeed, but ideally for the first 6 months.
Now, in terms of picking up some subtle signs if the child is not growing well, I mean, can you just highlight to the viewers how would that actually happen if there's poor nutrition, and how would the mother be able to pick that up?
That's if the child isn't growing in their clothes. We normally look at that. If the clothes is the same size all the time, if the child isn't growing, so that would be a cue. And also the child should be going to a clinic to be weighed, to get immunizations, and that's also where you can pick that up with the Road to Health chart. If not, if the child isn't gaining weight, normally we do diet history to find out how much is the child taking in. Because with breastfeeding, mothers normally breastfeed on demand, and we also sometimes the doctors would look to investigate, maybe there's something else going on as well. Yes, yes.
Okay, we've almost reached the end of the show. Can you maybe just give the viewers a take-home message in terms of food plates and what you've brought today to the show? So can you maybe just give the viewers a take-home message?
Well, my take-home message would be that it's not that expensive if you cut out all the unnecessary foods that you don't need. So you need to actually just sit down and look at your food plate, and you can actually work out how much it's going to cost from the food plate. So you would work backwards instead of working from shopping first. You would look at what you're going to buy and then see how much it's going to cost you, and where you can cut the unnecessary foods that you don't need.
Mrs. Vilet, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show, and we hope to see you again. Stay tuned for another episode of the Health Notebook, same time, same place, next week.